Hello YouTubers, this is a VR for bpruk's 1000 sub draw. But first of all, the housework. I'm smoking a corncob pipe as usual, and in it I've got Hill and Hill Tobacconist, Detroit, Michigan, After Hours. And I really wish I lived next door to this tobacconist, because this blend is very, very nice. A nice smoke. I think I remember seeing on Huey's report of them that it's actually their best-selling blend, and if it is, I can understand it. It makes my English heart sort of swell and, really enjoy the taste. Now this VR, I think Simon deserves every one of those 1,000+ people. He's very good, he's a great guy, knows his stuff, and I've never seen his face, because he always thinks that the thing that he's doing is more important and that he isn't. And it gives a very special way of concentrating on the product, which it does. It also sets my imagination off down 1,000 alleys as to why the hidden face. I accept that it's just what he says, that he prefers to concentrate on what he's seeing. But in my more romantic times, I can imagine the Masked Crusader, or MI5, MI6, a great surgeon. Give me 10 minutes and my mind's gone riot. But it's the question that fascinates me. What are we afraid of? We've got to mention one fear. And at one time I was quite afraid of various things. The dentist, for example, and that kind of thing. And my flight response is quite high. Fight or fly, and you can see me 300 yards down the road going at about 90 miles an hour sometimes. Although in my younger days I have been involved in sort of fights. But I've changed a lot as I've got older. Fears that I have are no longer there. But there's one fear that I've got more than any other. And that's fear of fear itself. I fear being afraid. There's a lovely bit in Dune, the science fiction novel, where fear is called the mind killer. And I'm sure that that's true. And it talks about allowing your fear to flow over you and pass you by. And looking back, you'll see your fear going. The fear of being afraid, the fear of being a coward, the fear of flight, not being able to stand up to something. Because you're petrified. It's a very strong fear in me. I don't know why I should fear being afraid, because fear is quite a natural experience. I'm sure those who have been in the armed forces have felt fear. Courage isn't the lack of fear. Courage is being able to face your fear and still do what you have to do. And I suppose that's what frightens me. Would I still be able to do what I have to do? I hope I would. I've had to face some operations recently, and at one time I would have been very frightened of going down for anaesthetic. I prefer all my operations to be under general anaesthetic, and under local anaesthetic rather, so I can keep my eye on what's happening. But this one, the surgeon said, look, I would be embarrassed if you were awake whilst I was operating on you. So I went through it without and didn't worry about it. But I don't know whether it's odd to be afraid of being afraid. I've never thought of it before until this question. And I went through my fears to list them and found that they weren't there anymore in that sense. I'm not afraid of snakes. I'm not afraid of lots of things that I used to be afraid of. Having said that, tonight I'll probably find one of the great fears races back. But fear of being afraid, which I think is linked with fear of feeling a coward, fear of not being able to face what you have to face. And when I look in the past, I sort of think the bravery of some men and women, the bravery of the patient who's being cut for the stone, which was one of the most popular operations to have. Well, not popular, but one of the earliest sort of operations that was successful. I wonder what those Civil War veterans felt. It's the fear of knowing that you're up against the odds. I read a very interesting book on the early days of the Foreign Legion and how many times they knew that they were going to fight to the end. And there was one battle where they were fighting and there were only 2 left. And the enemy ceasefire and came and asked them to surrender. And they wouldn't. It's interesting, isn't it, that as times change, our attitudes change. The surgeons used to have a saying in pre-anaesthetic days, and it's one that my granddad told me, that he'd gone through an operation without anaesthetic. And the surgeon looked down at him before the operation and said, "Trust in the Lord and keep your bowels open." Which, I suppose is good advice. I'm not going to try and analyse this fear. Or even put a judgment on it. Because I believe that when the time comes, I'll be able to face the fear. I hope so. That I'll be able to not run, turn and stand. I think it's got a lot to do with being older. You don't have the anger that you used to have as a younger man that would help to carry you through some of the things. You sometimes think, that a lot of things that we think of as important are really not important at all. I'm afraid this is virtually smoked away. But that's it. Fear of fear. Now I'm trying again to think of something to leave you with to lighten the situation. There was a nursing home, and the sister used to each night give all the male patients a glass of whiskey and a Viagra pill. And one day one of the carers said to her, "Sister, why do you give them a glass of whiskey and a Viagra pill?" And she told, it's simple really. She said the glass of whiskey helps them to sleep, and the Viagra pill stops them from rolling out of bed.